All right. Hi, guys.
There.
How is everybody doing? It says I'm muted, but I should be muted.
The big speaker's on.
All right. Oh, that'll go away, but okay. Hi.
The last button on the side.
Which one?
Button on the side so you're not, so we can just see your screen. Yep. Oh, hi. Then drag it down.
Bye, bye, bye.
So we're talking about my favorite topic, you guys, HOAs. I was actually just with a client in Plymouth looking at a townhome, and we were talking about hazard insurance. Dave.
Yes.
So that's something I don't have on here, but I'm going to throw that in at the end. I know there's so many topics about HOAs that, like, we don't have time to cover everything, but I did leave a big chunk at the end to go over. And that's something that I want to bring up because that came up yesterday with Dave, and then it came up today with my client. So I'm like, oh, hazard insurance, let's talk about it. So how many of you guys deal with HOAs? I mean, everybody. How many deals with them like all the time? Like you're just like all the time. I feel like either you kind of do or you don't. And so today we're going to go through just what it is, basically what it is in real estate, because that's what matters to us. Ordering HOA documents, contingencies, advising buyers, and then I'm going to share some email templates with you guys that I have used for years, whether it be the buyer or the seller, that have really worked well for me. And then we're going to talk about like best practices. So first thing is just what is an HOA? It's homeowners association, set up to oversee properties, plan development. When you join, you're usually required to pay monthly fees. There are HOAs that are in neighborhoods too. You guys know that are, if like you share, even just like you share one community road, you share one sidewalk, you share one path, you share one park, that could be a neighborhood association as well. So this is basically short for what does it do? You can think of it as a hall monitor, enforcing rules and safety. Basically, HOA, it's rules, it's safety. I think it's more rules than it is safety, but, and how much does it cost? They're typically paid monthly and it depends on the neighborhood. What was interesting when I was making this is I looked up the average HOA dues in Minnesota. It actually ranks with an average around 636, which is just astronomical to me. But it's because of all of our downtown condos. It's all of the condos, high rises that really include all the workout and the parking and all those kind of things and amenities. Because we have 4 seasons and it's year round, we can have the pools, we can have the dog parks, we can have these things. But I was surprised at how high that was, but I'm also cheap. So difference between an HOA and a property management company. So the HOA is the decision-making authority. They are the board, the community members, they're in charge. They make the rules, but they're all volunteer. Almost all boards are volunteer. Ray, have you heard of a board that wasn't volunteer-based? I heard of it once.
They're generally made up of homeowners.
I've always thought that they were all volunteer, but I heard once about an HOA that set aside $100 to pay their board members once a year. And I'm like, you couldn't pay, I mean, $100. I mean, I still wouldn't do it.
I could see some doing it.
Yeah.
At the end, maybe you get a month of dues paid.
Yeah. Yeah. A month.
HOA.
I would do it. I'm on my board, actually. I'm the secretary and I have a board meeting tonight and they could not pay me enough to stay on the board again. So what most HOAs do is they hire a property management company. And those are anywhere from, I've seen them as cheap as like $200 a month up to $5,000 a month. It depends on exactly what they're responsible for. But the property management company, they are kind of like the executor of all the rules. They're the bad guy. So really, is that me?
Yeah. Connection might be a little.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Yay, people can hear. Okay, great. So we're gonna jump right into ordering HOA documents. So how many of you order HOA documents for your clients? You. How many of you just tell them to do it on their own? Okay. There's no right or wrong way. There are some people who believe strongly that you should order them for your clients and pay for them. For instance, I believe like Cindy Freud and her team downtown, they do a ton of condos. I talked to Sarah Maz and they pay for them, order them. They just take care of it for their clients. Some people believe I just don't even want to touch it. I don't even want to be near it. I don't know what to order. I'm not even doing it. I'm going to share an email template with you at the end that basically gives your client the choice of, hey, guess what? If you know what you're doing with your HOA, here's the 10 documents we need. You can go in and order them, and most of them you can find for free. And I let clients know you're either going to spend time or money when it comes to HOA documents. Or if you're a homeowner, you have no idea where your documents are, you've lived there forever, you don't want to deal with it, then I will gather everything for you in your portal. If you give me your login, I'll get it all queued up. You need to call me with a credit card. So that's the way that I've handled it in the past. Again, there's no right or wrong way. But within ordering HOA documents, you're going to order 5 basic things. So the first one is, and I put these in order of importance, and this is my opinion of importance. So it may or may not be what is really important, but you need, first of all, they call them CC&Rs, or just the declaration, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or just the declaration. That is basically just all the rights, responsibilities. All of these just have all the legal jargon that says what, who, where, when, and defines everything. The second thing, which I think is more important, but legally speaking, articles of incorporation are second. This is where you can find a lot of information about like lot, land, use, about, I was involved in a lawsuit with an HOA, and one of the things we needed to figure out, which we figured out using the articles, was I was responsible for my home, and I was responsible for my shared common wall all the way down into the ground, into the foundation. And so I was getting water in my home. And so even though it was underground, it was a shared common responsibility of a same wall all the way to the ground in the foundation, and I was still responsible for it. So it's like, it was just a mess. Did you admit that person, or should I?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. So next up is the bylaws. These are going to have a lot of the technical rules and regulations, not so much the actual rules and regulations, which are really easy to read, like don't smoke, don't have a pet bigger than this, don't use a grill. Bylaws are going to be a lot more talking about if you can allow rentals and what those rentals look like. Do you need leasing terms? All of these documents are legally binding. Very similar to, you know, most of us have LLCs or S Corps. You know, you have articles, you register with the state. That's, you know, this is their business. So it is an entity. So those are the 4 real hardcore, like you absolutely must provide those 4. Do you have any questions on those?
I'll also note that on the CIC addendum, halfway down, I think it's like the second section, it tells you what should be provided. So that's reiterated. So if you forget, it also tells you on the CIC addendum what's required.
So additional documents. My best practice is whenever I have done an offer for a buyer, you have the traditional CIC addendum that goes with an purchase agreement, and it's all the stuff. I add in, I'll show you the exact line. I add in, must provide all documents referenced above in addition to, and I personally add in proof of insurance, which I believe is in the CIC addendum, which is different, or the CIC receipt, which is different. I always add in the past 6 months of meeting minutes. because those can take a while to get, but in my opinion, and again, just my opinion, getting the past 6 months of meeting minutes, I don't even care about the rest of the documents. I mean, I do, but that's where you're going to find out any of the really big important stuff that they've been talking about in these board meetings. And that's where you're going to find out the difference between, oh, we did talk about maybe having an assessment of $40,000 each person. It's like, wait, what? And that's where you're going to find it. It's going to be in those meeting minutes, because until it's voted on and until it's adopted and all these things, the only place you're going to have any inside information is going to be in those meeting minutes. Dana.
I said the last 2 condo buy sides I've done have fallen into the new underwriting rules.
Oh my God.
So the lenders have wanted
we'll talk about those.
18 months or 24 months.
Oh, that much?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we'll talk about the new rules with lending a little bit. Not super into what they've done, but one thing too is the responsibility grid, which I think is awesome. Not a lot of places do this. Have you guys seen these? Where it literally lists out roof, foundation, siding, windows, and it says who's in charge of maintaining the maintenance of it. Is it the homeowner or the association? Who's in charge of replacing it? And so I guess the big thing is most associations are part of MNCIHO, which is a Minnesota organization that really promotes associations to have a lot of disclosure and be really forthright about the care and maintenance of their properties. And so what the responsibility grid does is it leaves nothing up to question. So Dave can't say, hey, you know what? My fence blew over and it killed my dog. And he can't say, well, I didn't know if it was my responsibility or not. And so I'm going to sue. And it's like, well, it says right here that you are responsible for the maintenance of that, but financially we will replace it. So it gets into whole replace, maintain. It's a mess, but those grids can be super duper helpful. I know some complexes have them all the way down to like, you're responsible for the door handle, but not the door, but the door handle. In my HOA complex currently, I had bees in my front sconce by my address, and I am not responsible for that sconce. I'm responsible to tell them when the sconce needs to be painted and when the light bulb needs to be changed. But otherwise, I should not touch said sconce. And so I had to put in a work request to say, hi, I know I'm not supposed to touch the sconce. There's about 10 hornets in there. Can you guys come do something about that? And they did. I'm also in my HOA, my front light on my porch. I'm not supposed to change it. I'm supposed to call them and they're supposed to change it. They want all the lights in the neighborhood to either be soft white or yellow or whatever they're doing now so that none of them look weird. So again, there's all these kind of, interesting. Yeah, Ben?
So when does the rescission period start for you if you're adding in this additional stuff, just the required stuff that's already in?
I personally will not start the right of rescission until I've received everything that I asked for in that amendment. So the big one for me is 6 months of meeting minutes. Because I put that in my PA, I won't start it. They signed it.
They agreed to it, so.
So I'll say, people will be like, okay, here's the stuff. And I said, that's great. We're missing. I literally will never just okay, so we get an offer accepted. The agent says, here's all your HOA docs. I'm like, fantastic. I look them through. I note, okay, we're missing insurance. We're missing 6 months. I'll say, great. Looks like we're still missing 6 months of meeting minutes and insurance. Once you have those, I'll submit them to my buyer and we'll start the right of rescission. I will not start it until we have everything.
So the state requires, or the association just requires to be sent those required docs that are in the CIC?
Those are required. Yep, those 4 or 5.
So if somebody's like, these are all that's required, that's all you're going to get.
Because I wrote in 6 months of meeting minutes and they signed the purchase.
Well, if they didn't sign it, they're like, I see you want this. I'm only going to give you what's required. Then what do you do? You're like, okay.
It would have been something we definitely talked about. A lot of times I've just always had it on that line. I've always had 6 months of meeting minutes. And then they're like, oh, well, shoot, we didn't see that. I'm like, for you. I mean, you should look at the PA. So I'm a stickler and I will literally wait. That's not,
on that hill.
that's not to say that I don't send them over to Chad as my buyer and say, hey, Chad, here's the articles, here's the bylaws, here's what we've got. Start reviewing. We're still waiting on these things. And then once I have received everything, I send a clear email saying, thank you. We will now start our right of rescission and note the date and time. That's me. There could be other people's things. So this is what we were talking about, how every buyer has a right to review the bylaws, covenants, budget, financial statement, and just to make sure it's run how you want. Part of when you order all those HOA documents is you also are going to get what's called a resale disclosure. So a lot of times the HOA or an agent who isn't familiar with HOAs will say, here's all your documents. I'm like, cool. I need the resale disclosure. And they may say, I don't know what that is, or I don't know what you're talking about. So if it's a smaller run, they may use what Radine was talking about is a CIC receipt. And that's a form on the MLS where they can give it to the property management company. The property management company, it may just be Sue, who was paid $50 a month to do this for the HOA. She would write out what she knows and she would submit it. Most HOAs have an actual disclosure that states and answers 15 questions. And those are some of the questions that are bringing up some contention with lenders because they've changed those questions now, which is what Dana was talking about. So the resale disclosure has 18 questions and it's going to say, is this property in good standing up to paid up through their dues? Yes or no? Do you know of any upcoming assessments? Yes or no? And so it answers all of these and then it's signed by the property management company or sometimes the secretary or the president of the HOA. So Ray, did you have something?
For a point of clarity, CIC addendum, that's talking about that has that verbiage of what would be included, what the seller is required, because it's the seller's responsibility to provide these documents. We are conduits to that, but the CIC addendum will spell this out. The receipt is slightly different.
We can pull those up too to show you the different forms.
Also going to say that in our documents, we have a resale disclosure. That's not a receipt, but we have a resale disclosure that if you run into those small mom and pop or small HOAs that need support of knowing what that is, because it is required to have to sell, you could pull that and just send that over to be filled out. That's
and to Ben's point, what he was saying before, I will send an email to the other party if I'm representing a buyer, and I'll say, you know, if I'm a transaction coordinator, if I'm doing just my own file, I will say, hey, thanks so much. Super excited to work with you. Buyer has sent over trust funds, blah, 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 blah. We'll get started on this. Let me know when you have the HOA documents. Again, for your reference, we'll look for these things and I'll send them a list. There are agents who aren't familiar with HOAs and don't know what to ask for and don't know what to send. And so I've had agents who are super seasoned and have been like, hey, thanks so much for sending that. My admin's new and they sometimes forget what to send. Or, hey, I don't do HOAs and I didn't know that I would need these 15 things. Thanks for helping me out. So most of the time people consider it helpful. Yeah, and
as a listing agent, when do you order the docs?
That is coming up. Yes, that's my favorite question. So contingencies. The review process by law is 10 days. Then you can cancel, blah, 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 blah. That's basically what the right of rescission is. Let's say that Caleb is my buyer. No, let's say Caleb's my seller. And we're like, hey, we want somebody who's going to waive this whole contingency 10-day nonsense and just go right to pending. You cannot do that in the state of Minnesota. You have to take 3 days with the documents. There's no way you can change that, skip that. There must be a 3-day right of rescission, period. So a lot of times when you get into multiple offers, you might say, hey, Ben might say, hey, my buyer, they're willing to skip the whole 10-day contingency. Awesome, Ben, but technically you can't skip it. You can make it down to 3 days, and then at 3 days you can say, I'm waiving the last 7, but you cannot skip the entire thing together.
Where would you put that 3-day in? If
You could put it on
Caleb was
an,
your seller and said, I want that,
Put it anywhere.
you could negotiate it like during the deal and say, hey, part of our negotiation is we're countering we'll keep the price, we'll keep the terms, but we would like your seller to only do the 3-day.
gotcha, so it's in the counter offer.
I would do a counter offer.
Technically not supposed to even have it in writing. They are supposed to have 3 days of uninterrupted time to review those documents. So it's day 4, you come back with it. So if the DOC was in here, they'd tell you, shouldn't see it in a purchase agreement.
Well, and if Claire was in here, she would probably tell you the same.
Yes.
So what if they say at day 4, well, we've changed our mind, we do want 10 days?
Is that right?
It's a lot more.
Yeah, is that right?
And you lied and I don't trust you.
Then your whole deal falls apart.
Yeah.
So this is a template that I'm going to share with you guys. It's long, but it's long for a reason. We have templated emails for our clients. Our transaction coordinators should have templated emails. Anyone who's doing any sort of the paperwork and correspondence with your clients should have templated emails. This is my templated email that I would send to my buyers, or if I had a transaction coordinator, I would make them send this. So this just says, hello, Chad, my buyer. Attached are all of the HOA documents for this address, and I lay out, you have a 10-day time frame to review these documents, have any questions answered, and determine if there's anything that would prevent you from moving forward with your purchase. I don't say, hey, you got 10 days, you can back out for any reason. I lay it out very clearly. I guide them. I'm not a lawyer. We're not lawyers. We're not attorneys. I guide them and I say, here's some tips to be thinking of as you review the documents. And I put in some things that are just really common. Rules and regulations. Are there any rules that you can't meet? What's the policy on grills, on pets, on smoking? You wouldn't believe that sometimes all those things are buried somewhere. And if you have a smoker and they find out they can't smoke even in their home and they have to go 40 feet outside somewhere in the middle of winter and they didn't know that, that's a big deal. You wouldn't believe how many people care if they can have a grill and is it on their deck? Can it be on there? There's all these things are big deals. Some HOAs have it where you can't let your dog out the door on your patio. Like you have to take them outside and walk them to a dog area and they can go do their business. So, association dues, what isn't covered? Yes, they cover all these things, but what isn't covered? Common elements. This is where it gets really fun. Common elements and limited common elements. So this is where I bring up the questions. Is the maintenance of the windows, doors, and decks included in the HOA? Windows are hefty. That's a big price, putting on all new windows of wherever you live. But doors, whose responsibility is it to repair them, to replace them? Bylaws. What rights do owners have to vote, comment, and be notified about changes in the association and assessment? So what are the rules? Can the board just have a secret meeting, say, we're going to assess everybody $500,000, everybody votes and they're good to go? Or what are the rules in that association? Do they have to notify all the owners and give them 30 days? There's so many rules. Reserves and reserve study. My personal thought is that Minnesota and most realtors, and this number's gone up, but you recommend looking that in the financials of an HOA, they have $1,000 per unit in reserves. Kind of a standard number. Do you guys even look for even higher than that? Reserves. $1,000 per unit in reserves. It's kind of a baseline of like, let's say everything were to blow up and this whole thing was getting taken over by a hurricane. How much do they have in reserves per unit? It kind of shows the health of the association. Finances. Does the HOA appear to be well managed? Are they collecting dues? Do they have a long range plan? Have they have a reserve study? If you get HOA documents that are like 100, 200 pages, even though that seems very tedious and annoying, in my opinion, it shows the health of the HOA that they are doing these long range studies every 2 years. They are doing audits every 4 years. They are providing all of these different documents.
Are you reading through every sentence of these documents?
No.
You're saying to your buyer, you need.
My buyers, I'm saying, Anne, you're my buyer. This is what you should look at when you're reading these documents.
Okay.
So they come back to you and say, these are great questions. I don't see something here, or they ask a question about this. Is your response, it should be in your paperwork, and if not, then you go to the agent selling it to say,
good question.
We can't find this in this document. Can you answer this?
You'll see. Meeting minutes. Are there discussions about upcoming assessments? What impressions do you have about the board, the culture? You know, meeting minutes. No one showed up again. Meeting minutes. No one showed up again. Meeting minutes. Meeting minutes. You know, we've been talking about Bob and his leak on I mean, it's just good to get a feel. This is the second part of the email because it's a long email. I let them know, here are your action items. Okay, so here's all the documents for your records. Here's some things to think about when you read them. Here's your action items. Number 1, you're going to get a master insurance policy. You need to send that to your insurance person to set up insurance. It's called an HO6 policy. Basically, I don't know an insurance agent that doesn't know what an HO6 policy is. I tell them, take that form, go talk to your agent, give it to them. They should be able to let you know what you need. Number 2, I'm going to be sending you a resale disclosure statement via Instanet to sign. This states that you have received all the necessary documents. It does not, if you sign it, mean that you agree to the documents or like the documents or that you are absolutely not going to back out. It just says you have received. That's it. I then say, Dave, in my last paragraph, here's the association and property manager's contact information. You're encouraged to call them for clarification on any points. At this stage in the transaction, you are going to want to verify most of your questions with the first-hand source, the association. A copy of these documents has been sent to your lender and to the title company. The attached documentation is only for your records and your reference. Besides reviewing these and the 2 action items above, you do not need to do anything further. So I have used this template for 10 years. I lay it out, send it over. To me, it's better than here's your HOA docs. Look at them. So yeah, Matt.
So a copy of these docs that was already been sent to you under.
So as a transaction coordinator or a agent, whomever's doing your role, once you receive all the HOA documents, those should be sent to the lender, and those should also be sent to the title company. Just like any addendum or amendment, those should all be sent over. There's the signed resale disclosure, it's all part of it.
The other thing I'll make absolutely clear with my buyer is that you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, are responsible for reading these HOA documents. Because my interpretation of them may differ from yours. Not answering any, well, it said I can have a dog up to 50 pounds. My dog's 55 pounds. Not answering. Don't know.
Here's the number of the contact of the association and the HOA property management company. Again, we're at a point in the transaction where you should be confirming these answers with a first-hand source. And that may not be the agent. Most likely, it isn't the agent because the agent doesn't know what they're doing most of the time and can put things and the agent doesn't live there. And the homeowner, they may not even have lived there. Maybe this is a death of a parent and they're like, I don't even know what the HOA includes. So this is where you're really going to encourage your client as a buyer to get in touch with the HOA, the property management company. They're here to answer all those questions. You can help them out. You can take off, let's say your buyer comes back and says, here's my 10 questions. I'd say, fantastic. I'm going to forward these on to the property manager and include you in the email. So you help them out, but you don't answer these things.
For the years, I've also tried to be the one trying to get the answers for them. And clearly, I mean, obviously everyone here probably knows this. The HOA or the management company, the association, they're going to deal with the seller and the buyer a lot more quickly.
than an agent trying to get in the mix.
Get a call back.
And you know what, most of the time, what I found to be helpful too is really letting the seller know this HOA company, if this buyer has any, if you want to keep this buyer, you want to get them answers. So you want to help them get these answers. They can still back out anytime here. So the next email template that I use is when I'm dealing with the seller. So I personally, and I strongly believe in this, again, this is me, this isn't Claire, this isn't whatever. I absolutely will never list a property until I have the HOA documents in hand. I think my personal opinion is that it can take 10 days, it can take 14 days, it can take 30 days. You may not get everything. You may have trouble with the portal. You may need to get a credit card. I mean, if you have, people want to buy the property. I look at HOA documents as seller disclosures, lead-based paint, all those, everything should be there, out, ready. People shouldn't have to wait. My opinion. So this is yeah.
Yes.
It expires most of the time after 120 days or 6 months. And 95% of the time, they'll get you a new one, refresh it, give you a new date, and be fine. I've only seen in one circumstance where they wanted to charge me another $50. So there is that.
I've gotten burned twice, actually. I can't remember the management company's name. It was the management company, though, where they required the buyer's name.
Mm-hmm. I don't provide that.
Maybe it was the lender that was the driving factor that it had to be in the buyer's name. Because I had put my name.
To order the documents, you mean? Yeah. There's many different things. I personally, when I was still working for a team, I, as the admin on our team, had a login at condo certs for service residential. I mean, I had a login in a portal in every single one of those things, and I could pull them at any time. I just knew where they were. We dealt with it so much that I'd even just go back and look at, the declaration, the articles, the bylaws. Those are pretty much not going to change too often, but you always want to make sure if there are addendums or things that you're using the most current documents, and those are the ones that you're going to get when you order, when you
update. It's amended that it's 90 days that those disclosures are valid for.
90.
If it's let's say you have a buyer and it goes, from 2023 to 2024, will you ask the seller for updated everything? Because let's say they have the articles of incorporation or the rules and regs from 2023.
Yep.
And all they got you is maybe that new resale disclosure within that 90 days. Will you say hey, I do want this confirmed these were from 2024?
I would ask, has anything changed? Most of the time, it's pretty, I'm not going to say hard. It's tedious to change the articles, the declaration. It's tedious. You can't just add this on, throw it on an addendum. It's hard to change those things. So most of the time, if anything's changed, it'll be, oh, hey, we updated, here's an addendum to all the articles, the new piece of document or information. So I would not often do a lot of things besides financials change from year to year. So I reach out to my buyers. I say, okay, I'm working with a seller. Say, okay, when we're getting your photos done, staging, we're going to hang a lockbox, the post is going to be installed. While we're kind of doing that, they're working on the seller's disclosures. I send this email and I say, the next step in this process is we need to order your HOA. Do this. Why do we do it now? To have it ready for any potential buyers so we don't have a delay. They're very specific documents. They need to be ordered. Some of them are available for free. You can save yourself a lot of money if you know how to work your portal and pull a lot that you can for free. You can provide those to me to save on cost. However, the HOA resale disclosure document plus additional documents cost varies in every association. And I always let people know it ranges from $150 to $400. What do you guys think of that price range? I feel that's pretty common.
Go up a little bit, because I've started to
See like 500.
I've seen up to 6, because the resale, I've seen some HOA companies or property management companies, if that's really who's charging it, charge per document they can. And so when you total it all up, or if you want this articles of incorporation that is part of this package, that it's up, and I've seen it get up close to 600. And then if you do a rush fee in there, then there's
a lot of times this email warrants a phone call with your seller, whether you're the agent, whether you're a transaction person, and explain to them, you know, here by law, this is what we're going to have to provide. These are the things. So letting your seller know, it's not as simple as logging into your portal saying, I need a resale disclosure. That's not everything. We need all of these governing documents. We need welcome packets. We need certificates of insurance. We need all these things. I let them know, ordering these, you can do this yourself. You can go into your HOA portal. You can include my email. You can send these documents. If you know what you're doing, go for it. Let it roll. B, I can do this for you. I choose to order the documents for my sellers because I know what's needed, and it's going to be easier, more quicker, and efficient for me to just get it done right the first time than having them get in there. They're trying to stage, they're trying to get photos. Caleb, what do you guys do?
We usually order them ourselves.
And pay for them?
We pay for them.
And get paid at closing?
Get reimbursed at closing.
I mean, my team for what we did, we would order them for people we never paid for. Never. I think once. Even if we knew we'd get paid back at closing, we just never paid. We never, you know, the listing, you never know. Could fall through, could not happen. And that's it. That's that email template. So those are what I send to my buyers and my sellers. Your templated emails, that's where, if you had to write that every single time, I mean, that's like super duper long and really annoying. So again, I will share that email with everybody who's here in class today. I'll share all those emails if you want to, you know, take them, make them your own, save them. Connecting people to the project, property management company, and the financial health of the HOA. You're not a lawyer, all those things. Any questions so far on, this is kind of the brunt of it. Might be all I have in here.
This is probably a basic question for most people, but
no.
Where in the PA are you writing language around
the HOA? So actually I'm doing it on the CIC addendum that you include with the purchase agreement.
Okay.
And I can pull those.
And that's separate from the addendum that you send to the buyer when they've received the docs?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And there's a lot of agents who, just like inspection, there's agents who believe that they need to have an addendum or an signing that the right of rescission is now over. The inspection contingency is now ended. There's no right or wrong way. It's a matter of preference. Some people think email suffices. Some people want it on an addendum or an amendment. As long as you're making sure that as you're watching for your buyers, hey, you guys, just checking in. You have 4 days left. Hey, you have 2 days left. Have you looked at these? This is it. And for the agent, hey, just checking in. There's 3 days left in the contingency. So it's not rushing or pushing, but it's just reminding everybody, like, you know, you have a day or two. Do you guys have any questions? And the sooner you can determine if there are issues with the HOA for your buyers, the sooner you can get answers. And also, really for a listing agent, letting the buyers know everything you know, everything you possibly know. I wish Abby and Drusko was here. She was asking that she knew of an assessment coming. She knows that her seller's HOA has been talking about a $25,000 per unit assessment coming. They've been talking about it for years. They are getting close to voting on it, but haven't yet. So should she disclose that, was her question. Absolutely. If it's anything like we talk about that would prevent, inhibit, or alter, the use and enjoyment of this property and the sale, this is a very important material fact that that this is being discussed and that it hasn't been voted on, it hasn't been approved, but this is what's happening.
Well, there's a section in our PA that talks about assessment, so that's covered in that aspect. So if you know it, disclose it. But then in that, on our PA as well, when you know that there's a CIC, in the second to last page before signatures, there's all those check boxes of addendums. CIC is one of those boxes that you're going to check.
Yep.
Because now you're making that CIC amendment a part of addendum, a part of it. So then anything that you're adding in the other section is there. So when you're working with CICs, there's a physical checkbox on that PA. If you're the listing side or the buyer side, we need to make sure that it's checked and it's attached to make it part of that PA. So there's a lot of things already built into our purchase agreement that allow us to cover our assets in a lot of aspects, both our seller and our buyer. I would also say that when confirming dates, if the rescission period is resolved sooner than those 10 days, for your buyer, it puts a lot of ease for your seller. One, because now they know they're moving into pending that much quicker. But then second, your buyer's lender is more apt to then move along in that lending process, ordering the appraisals and all of that. If they're waiting to maximize those dates, that's pushing off how efficiently they're able to get your buyer ready for closing. So think of that too. We've done a lot of things in tandem. The sooner you can have everybody on the same page, the quicker you're moving things along. So,
Dave,
just real quick. So when you are representing a buyer who's buying a condo,
you talk a little louder.
When you're representing a buyer who's buying a condo, you also add the CIC addendum to that purchase agreement?
Yes.
Rather than
Every time.
every time.
Checkbox.
there's the checkbox, but then there's also the addendum. So
Yep. Because on that addendum too, it says who the property management company is, and you get to add in additional documents that you're expecting on top of the required things.
So when you get those HOA documents and you have the resale disclosure, it's telling us everything in that resale disclosure. That's really important. It's also telling the lender who they need to contact to order the condo docs, which are different than the HOA documents. And it's also telling title who they need to contact to do the assessments, or there's this, and so everybody needs those documents. They all need them at different times, but giving everyone what they have while you have it. So yes, I know that Ben was asking, would you send it, would you wait until you receive the minutes? Yes, to technically start the contingency, but immediately, once I get any documents, I'm sending them to Chad. And I'm saying, Chad, here's this, start reviewing. There's a lot of things, start reviewing. So.
You guys be thankful. I know this is a lot when you're trying to sell a property, whether you're the listing agent or the buyer's agent for that has an HOA. I'm also licensed in Georgia. There are no regulations around documents to provide when you're buying a condo.
Oh my God.
An HOA. There's no CIC addendum.
There's no Mincayo.
Nope.
You just have your 10-day inspection period as the buffer. Or is it even 10 days there, 7 days there?
It's what you write it in. Due diligence. Yeah. But if you don't act, you have to physically ask on every PA. There's no standard. You have to put it in special stipulations, sort of like our other.
Yep.
Spell out what exactly you're asking the seller to do.
Matt.
I've had some very concerned buyers in the past, and after I tell them, I'm not a lawyer, reading over the docs, they're actually like, do you know a lawyer? I'm like, oh yeah, one of my clients is a real estate attorney, so they've been happy to.
There's tons of great. My favorite is Thompson, Tarasek, Lee O'Halloran, the big long name, but it's TTLO. They are a local law firm. They specialize in HOAs. They helped represent me in an HOA lawsuit that I had. Jennifer Thompson is incredible. They're wonderful. There's also Helmuth and Johnson. They are local. They are very, very well known in the HOA community. Phaedra Johnson, she does a lot of their stuff. So there are some, and if your client wants to pay to have somebody review them, they absolutely can. But the other thing is, if you have clients who are like, you know, worried, but like nervous about like these HOA, I mean, maybe a CIC community isn't right for them. And there's no wrong reason to not have that conversation. You know, I had some clients who were like, yeah, but so what if I want to do a bird feeder? And what if I want to do an American flag? And what if it comes and I can't do these planters? And what if, are they going to tell me what if I want my front? I'm like, maybe living in a common interest community isn't right for you. There are a lot of risks, even in certain neighborhoods where it's a common interest community, but it's not an HOA. I'm just thinking like golf courses or Beacons Crossing or things like that. You cannot leave certain cars parked in the driveway for over 24 hours. You cannot have a boat. You cannot have a trailer. You cannot, I mean, they're very specific on, you know, garage doors and bikes and, you know, keeping things parking on the street. So again, looking into what those neighborhoods even dictate can and cannot happen is important too. That may be important. You need to know those things that make your client unique. Many of you know Tom Vance. Tom was buying a townhome in Minnetonka, and the big thing for us was his husband owns Baker's Ribs in Eden Prairie. Well, they have a Baker's Ribs truck. And one of the rules that would not fit in the garage, and one of the rules in the HOA in Minnetonka says you cannot have a vehicle parked in the driveway more than X many days in a row without moving it, blah, 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 blah. And so that was a very big, important thing for us to connect with the association to explain why they had the truck, when the truck would be there, and would that be allowed? It's always better to ask than not.
Are we going to get to like suburban big communities that have an HOA?
One thing I wanted to talk about that, yes.
Like Florida, the super communities where.
Florida. Oh my gosh. One thing I did want to talk about in terms of the neighborhoods that have super HOAs, there's something that's become more popular as places grow, as communities grow, is you're going to find, I'm just going to try to come up with an example.
The house in Plymouth.
Thank you. I'm even coming up with something else. There are times where there are homes that qualify for 2 associations, and you need to have HOA documents ordered for the master association and the sub association. And so there is 2 sets of documents, 2 resale disclosures. There's 2 of everything.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
So I ran into this issue where my sellers did not know. They bought new construction. Lived there a couple years. They did not know that they were in a HOA. They knew they were in an HOA, and I was too young of an agent to realize, hey, we need to disclose this. This needs to be a CI because it is. There's community property. There's pool, there's tennis courts, there's playgrounds, there's walking trails.
And some of these, depending on where your property lands, Dave and his wife may buy a house in Plymouth or on a golf course or somewhere, and they may be responsible for shoveling the sidewalk on the back end of their property, depending on how it lands. So there are
So my question is, how do we know if that property, if our sellers don't know or don't disclose, how do we know other than looking at a past sale, I guess?
I call the HOA company or the HOA, I call the property management company. I try to on every HOA that I do as a listing agent, and I'll call and I'll say, hey, Radine at First Service Financial, I'm going to be listing this property. I have these things here. I'm calling to confirm with you. Is it still correct that dogs can be this size, Is it still correct that there's no rentals? Oh, no, that's changed. We've hit our rental cap. We no longer allow rentals. Rental cap is this. I just confirm with what I know already, and ask, is this still correct?
Yeah.
Is this still applicable? Has anything changed?
That's very, very, very wise, I think, because I think a lot of times some of these suburban properties get sold without the
You
buyer.
have no idea that it's $100 a month just because you have access to Parker's Lake and you didn't know that. And you didn't know that you can't have a boat trailer and your kids can have a playhouse, but they can only have a playhouse that's a Rainbow brand. I mean, like, it gets very specific.
But in Chad's scenario, that person didn't realize that they bought into a common interest community.
You didn't know you were selling?
How do you, to your knowledge, is there a place that all HOAs are listed so that even if that buyer was unassuming and they didn't know when they go to sell that they are in one?
The legal description could be a clue.
And that's something.
Yeah, but also you have townhomes that are in a CIC community, but they're not block.
Yeah.
So.
And not all HOAs are common interest communities.
Yes.
So this is the court designation.
One thing I did want to bring up really quick, I know we're getting close on time. One thing that I found within the past 10 years and just working with clients who are FHA or VA or things, and then you want to find townhome complexes that are FHA or VA, and they're not, but they say they are, but they are, but they're not. One thing that I've learned that has been really, really, really helpful is if you have a buyer and they're looking for a property that accepts FHA or VA, and you search for it, don't ever go by what the listing agent has put. Also, if the property is a lot and block in the legal description, not CIC condo unit 1, 2, if it actually says lot block, that means that your client can have whatever financing they want. They can purchase as an FHA. It means that the HOA itself cannot stipulate what's accepted because there's a lot block. This happens most of the time when it comes with condos and townhomes. Townhomes, for the majority, have lot blocks, not always, but the majority of townhomes have a lot and a block. 99% of the time, condos have CICs, which means the HOA owns, runs, manages the entire building. Whereas if it's a lot block, yeah, we dictate the whole neighborhood and who can use what garbage and all that, but with that plot of land, you can use whatever financing you need. So there's a lot of misconceptions. So really understand FHA and VA and what associations will accept and ask questions. A lot of times agents are putting things that they think are right, that are accurate, and they just may not know. It's not malicious, hopefully, but it's a lot of time. If you should work with a lender who can run these things, should know these things. There's also lenders who can do what's called a spot approval, where depending on number of rentals, units, they could maybe get your client approved for FHA financing in that complex just this one time. So ask questions. Not everything is end all be all when it comes to HOAs.
As a piggyback on the FHA and VA, if you don't know it, but you have somebody that is interested in a condo and they have one of those financing types, is to go to FHA approved docs, percent every single time, regardless if the listing agent says it's approved, whether or not they say it is approved. Check it every single time.
You have your lender check too. There's a separate site that lenders can do too. A lot of times you'll say, oh, look, it says that it's listed. It may be expired.
Well, the website will show you if it's expired or if they're up for renewal. It'll show you that. You can use that in tandem with your lender. If the association for some reason isn't approved, your buyer is the one that's being approved for that spot approval. So they're the ones that could get a spot approval on that. But that's a website. Know it, love it, put it in your back pocket that if you're going to work with associations that you're checking it. Again, whether or not the listing agent says that it's approved or not, there are certain things as you get to know your buyers, things you're saying those documents that are important to them. you're previewing the documents. Well, you can't tell them whether or not they can or not, but you're previewing them. There are certain things that have changed. What was the last time those rules of regs were updated? If it's a 2019 document, there may be conversations that rules of regs might have been amended in a small conversation where now something has changed. But
the big thing that I'm seeing too, just as we move forward in newer years, the smoking thing is big. Smoking is becoming banned in so many places and so many condos that are sitting, because you cannot smoke there. You cannot smoke inside. You cannot smoke outside. You have to be across the street. Also, when talking to your clients, we all know this, but talk about them and future plans. And are you thinking of getting a dog? And I know you may not grill right now, but maybe you want to grill, or maybe you want to use your underground parking space to store your vintage beautiful car for over the winter. Can you do that? Do they bike? Is there somewhere to put their bike? There's all these things that, again, common interest community may not be right for them, but it can be really great for some people. So we didn't touch on a lot of things. One thing I'm going to really encourage you to do is when you're taking your CEs every year that I can, it rotates, take the support animal, emotional support, support animal, CE class if you can. It's like 2 credits, but that'll talk about, we didn't even talk about, can you get your dog in? And what if your dog's not? What if your dog's 100 pounds? The difference between emotional support animal and service animal. Hopefully we all know that. If you don't, refresh yourself, refresh your client. And the other thing about Dana mentioned too, there are some changes where we all remember what happened in Florida how many years ago?
2019 or
2019,
yeah.
when that whole condo building collapsed. Because of that, there were things that were put into play that part of MNCIHO, which is Minnesota Association, requires most of these associations now to do a 2-year maintenance, a 2-year walkabout, a 2-year check-in, so that these things are being looked at. Also, there are new questions on the lender questionnaire that are asking certain HOAs to disclose if they know X, Y, and Z. And there are a lot of property management companies who are refusing to answer those questions. And so if you have any questions about that, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to offer Sarah, she's going to kill me, but Sarah Maz has done a ton of this as well, where you're at a standstill because a lender can't get an HOA to answer the questionnaire, and the lender cannot move forward without a questionnaire answered. And so, Justin.
I just went through this to buy my own condo.
Yeah.
The rules that were kind of temporary, they formally made them old, and so it held up stuff. Not that the association didn't want to answer the questions, it's how they answered them. It ultimately took me paying more out of my own pocket, an engineer or a tradesperson to go out and do some additional inspections, write up a report, send it to my lender in order for me to actually be able to close. Wow.
There's stuff that I think would be a really good follow-up to this on the
There's
spot
so many
that have changed when it comes up to the lending component, that as listing agents, not only buying agents, but listing agents, we used to kind of have a pass-through when it came up to listing condos, and we're going to want to be way more savvy when it comes up to the properties that we're listing, because there's dynamics that it's no longer whether or not the buyer's qualified, it's whether or not your building is qualified. So.
And again, this is, maybe we'll do a second follow-up class. There's this whole thing too, where, what's that university lofts? 2650? Yeah, 2650 University. Like they had a whole lawsuit with like all the outside exterior and the stucco. Same over here in Lake Calhoun or Bay Makaska. Like they had all the exterior and all these things.
1200 Nicolette with the Japanese restaurant.
Yep. So there's all these that are known to have assessments that have happened for flaws that they were built with. 2600 University is just one that we dealt with. We sold 4 or 5 units in there that had to all be redone. So we also didn't cover HIAs. which is something that is one of my favorite things because I actually think they're wonderful. So maybe we can have a follow-up class that dives in a little deeper into some of those HIAs, but if you want to stay after and chat, I'm here, and I don't want to keep anybody that has to go. So I will email all of you. Do I know who came so I can make sure I email them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll remember.
Okay.
I can do the list.
And then I'll email all of you those templates. If you want to use them, great. If you like them, great. Again, it's just something that I did that I found it saves some time. And also make your client know or feel that you know what they should be looking for too. But yeah, you can't read every single document. It's just not possible. I mean, you can.
10 pages a night for 10 days.
And half the time you don't know what you're reading.
You sell them in the same unit in case you don't understand anything pretty fluid.
And you become very familiar with the places you sell, and different places where you're like, oh yeah, the towers or towers, like those are two different.
River this, river that.
Yep, 19 South First is actually different than, I mean, we all have been like, wait, what? We have so those are all different. Looking at HOAs, Sunset Ridge in St. Louis Park, they're just wrapping up their 20-year HOA. We own an investment property there, and it was one of the best things they could have ever done. But what does it mean what is an HIA, and how does it affect your buyer, and are they going to want to take that on? And could it be a really good thing if they did? 2600, 2100, 2300 Blaisdell. It's another one. So there's so many. So have a great day, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Guys, I literally just got an email that I got a listing appointment for.
Great.
Like 2 minutes.
Which condo? Which complex?
It's for one of the Calhoun, there's
Yeah.
a million of them.
I know.